bright lights of the fashion studio glared down, bouncing off the sleek white floors and the tall mirrors lining the walls. It was the kind of place where image ruled everything, and 27-year-old Lena had mastered her role in it. As one of the top makeup artists on set, she'd painted the faces of models who graced magazine covers and walked high-end runways. Today should have been just another fast-paced shoot models shuffling in and out of the chair photographers barking adjustments and assistants hauling equipment. But the moment shattered when she felt it, a sudden, invasive grab at her waist from behind. She froze the brush in her hand, still hovering near the model's cheek. Behind her, two male assistants, Rico and Dane, grinned like jackals. "Damn, Lena, working that makeup brush. Like you work those hips," Rico sneered, his hand lingering before he finally let go. Dane leaned closer, pretending to adjust a light stand, but clearly angling to block her from stepping away. His arm brushed her chest intentionally, and he chuckled when she flinched. The nearby stylist looked up but quickly glanced away, pretending she hadn't seen anything. That was the worst part, how silent the room suddenly felt, the way everyone's eyes darted away instead of meeting hers. It wasn't the first time someone had crossed a line in this industry, but Lena had never been humiliated so openly, so brazenly. "Careful," Lena said tightly, forcing her tone to remain steady as she stepped aside. She wanted to shout, to curse, to throw the jar of setting powder at their smug faces, but her professional mask stayed on. She knew this wasn't the place for an outburst. Not yet. Rico smirked. "Relax, babe. Just playing." "Yeah," Dane added. "Don't be so uptight. We're just having fun." "Fun?" The word made her stomach twist. The model in her chair shifted uncomfortably, but didn't say anything. The photographer, too, focused on adjusting his camera settings, didn't notice, or maybe didn't care. Lena felt heat rising in her chest, but she forced herself to breathe slowly. She'd learned long ago that anger in the moment only gave people like them more ammunition. Instead, she kept her eyes on her work, even as their laughter echoed behind her. Inside, though, she was already plotting. Rico and Dane thought they could touch her without consequences because she was just the makeup artist, because no one would step in to defend her, because in this glamorous yet toxic environment, silence was safer than confrontation. They didn't know her history. They didn't know about the years she'd spent training in judo before she ever picked up a makeup brush. They didn't know that every time she tied her belt and stepped onto the mat, she learned not just to fight, but to win. She finished the model's look with perfect precision, every sweep of color steady, despite the storm brewing inside her. Rico and Dane moved on, snickering, unaware that they had just crossed a line they wouldn't be able to uncross. Lena wasn't going to let this pass. She'd keep her silence for now, but in her mind, she could already see it. Their laughter cut short, their arrogance crushed in front of everyone they were trying to impress. This wasn't over. Lena sat in the small corner of the break room, her stainless steel thermos of tea untouched, eyes fixed on the black screen of her phone. Her mind replayed the scene in the studio, over and over, the heat of Rico's hand on her waist, Dane's arm pressing against her chest, the smug grins, the stifled laughter in the background. Every replay brought a new wave of shame that quickly boiled into rage. She could still hear Rico's words, "just playing." That wasn't play. That was dominance, disguised as humor, and she wasn't going to let them have the last laugh. Her phone buzzed a text from her younger brother Alex. "Coming over Sunday for dinner?" She typed a quick reply. "Yes. And maybe I'll ask you to help me with a little training." She hit send, with the ghost of a smirk forming on her lips. Lena hadn't been on a judo mat in almost a year. Work had been relentless, with back-to-back shoots, and celebrity clients flying her around the country. But muscle memory never really left you. She could still feel the taut grip of a GI in her hands, still remember the rush of adrenaline when an opponent's weight shifted just right before she threw them to the ground. When she'd first moved to the city, judo had been her anchor. Her instructor, a wiry woman in her 50s named Coach Amani, had drilled one lesson into her head: more than any other power isn't in your arms, Lena. It's in how you use their force against them. Those words echoed now. Rico and Dane thought they were in control because they were physically larger, because they thrived on catching her off guard. But she didn't need brute strength. She just needed timing, precision, and the perfect opportunity. The rest of the day, Lena kept her head down, saying little, but watching everything. Rico and Dane strutted around the set, cracking inside jokes, occasionally shooting her sly looks, as if to remind her they weren't done. They thrived on reactions, and her lack of one seemed to frustrate them. At lunch, she caught them whispering near the lighting rig Rico, glancing her way with that same self-satisfied smirk. It was confirmation they thought she was an easy mark, and that arrogance was going to be their downfall. That evening, after packing away her brushes and palettes, Lena didn't head home. Instead, she went straight to an old warehouse gym across town where Coach Imani still taught twice a week. The familiar smell of sweat and mats hit her the moment she stepped inside. "Well, look who finally remembered where we are," Imani called, a grin breaking across her face. Lena smiled faintly. "I need to brush off some rust. Got a couple of situations at work." Imani's brow arched. "The kind that need words or throws," Lena said simply. The next hour was a blur of drills, rolls, and foot sweeps. Every slam of her opponent on the mat stripped away a little more of the helplessness she'd felt earlier. By the time she left, sweat-drenched and breathing hard, her mind was clear. She didn't want to just hit back. She wanted to make a statement they wouldn't forget, and she would, soon. 2 days later, Lena was in the back storage room of the studio, sorting through boxes of fresh palettes and airbrush cartridges. The hum of the main floor was muffled here, the faint beat of background music barely bleeding through the walls. She liked the quiet. It gave her space to think. That quiet shattered when the door creaked open behind her. "Well, look who we found." Rico's voice slithered into the air, dripping with mockery. Dane followed, closing the door behind them with an audible click. Lena didn't turn around immediately. She placed the last pallet neatly on the shelf, as if their presence didn't matter. "I'm busy. Go bother someone else." Rico chuckled, stepping closer. "You've been avoiding us, Lena. Kinda hurts my feelings." Dane grinned, leaning on a crate. "We just wanted to see if you're still so uptight. Maybe loosen you up a little." Lena finally turned her eyes calm but focused. "Touch me again, and you'll regret it." Her voice was low, not raised, but it carried a weight that made Dane's smirk falter for a split second. Rico stepped right into her space, towering over her. "Or what? You gonna powder my nose?" It happened in a blur. Rico reached out, fingertips grazing her hip again, only this time Lena's right hand shot up, gripping his wrist. In a swift pivot, she used his own forward motion against him, twisting his arm and forcing his upper body downward. He gasped in surprise as his knees buckled slightly from the pressure. "Careful," Lena said softly, her eyes locked on his. "I might powder more than your nose." She released him with a sudden shove that sent him stumbling back a step. Dane barked a laugh to mask his unease. "Whoa, Rico, the makeup girl's got claws." But the way his eyes narrowed told Lena he didn't like the shift in balance. She adjusted her jacket sleeves as if nothing had happened. "I'm not here to play your games. Leave me alone." For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Rico straightened, flexing his wrist and forcing a grin. "Guess we'll just have to find the right time. You won't always see us coming." They left with that parting threat, but Lena noticed the way Rico kept rubbing his wrist on the way out. The encounter hadn't scared them off completely, but it had planted a seed. Now, they knew she wasn't the passive target they thought she was. Still, she could feel it. This wasn't the end. Men like Rico and Dane didn't take warnings as boundaries. They took them as challenges. That night, Lena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, her reflection framed by the warm light above. She rolled her shoulders, stretching her neck. In her mind, she replayed every possible scenario: hallways, backstage corridors, late-night rap parties. She didn't just want to defend herself. She wanted the moment to be undeniable public and impossible for them to twist into their own narrative. When the right moment came, she would make sure everyone saw exactly what happened and exactly why. The rap party for the campaign was set in a converted rooftop lounge, all exposed brick and hanging string lights swaying in the night breeze. The skyline glittered beyond the glass panels, and music pulsed steadily from hidden speakers. Lena arrived in a fitted black dress and ankle boots, not flashy, but sleek enough to blend into the crowd of stylists, models, and crew already mingling around the bar. She wasn't here to celebrate. She was here to set the stage. Over the last few days, she'd overheard just enough to know Rico and Dane would be there. Parties like this were their playground, loosened boundaries. Alcohol in hand, the safety of a crowd too distracted to intervene. Exactly what she needed. Sure enough, she spotted them within 20 minutes. Rico was leaning against the bar, his shirt unbuttoned, just enough to telegraph ego, while Dane held court with a group of junior stylists, making them laugh with some story. Both were already flushed from drinking. Lena positioned herself near the dance floor, pretending to be deep in conversation with one of the lighting techs. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Dane nudge Rico and tilt his chin toward her. A slow grin spread across Rico's face. Perfect. She made sure her drink was half empty, her body angled toward an open space between the bar and the dance floor, a place where foot traffic thinned, but sightlines were wide. She wanted witnesses. It didn't take long. Rico came first, swaggering through the crowd with Dane trailing behind like a shadow. He slipped in close, his breath already thick with liquor. "Looking good tonight, Lena," he said, his hand already sliding toward her hip. Before it landed, she stepped sideways, letting him stumble slightly toward her shoulder. "Careful," she said, her tone almost casual. "You might spill my drink." Dane laughed, circling behind her. "Oh, we'll spill more than that." Her grip tightened subtly on the glass in her hand. She turned, angling her body so the people at the bar could see. Every movement was deliberate now. Rico lunged again, this time, bolder, his hand grazing the curve of her waist. And just like that, she had her opening. Lena's left hand shot to his wrist, gripping with practiced precision. She pivoted on her heel, her right arm hooking under his. The momentum of his drunken lurch did the rest, his own weight carrying him up and over her shoulder. The sound when he hit the polished wooden floor was sharp, a mix of impact and the wind being driven out of him. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned. Dane froze, his smirk evaporating. Rico lay sprawled on his back, groaning, one arm clutched against his side. Lena stepped back, breathing steady. Her dress unruffled her eyes, sweeping the circle of stunned onlookers. "Touch me," again she said clearly, her voice cutting through the music, "and you'll be leaving on a stretcher." Nobody laughed. She set her drink on the nearest table and walked away without another glance. Now the trap had sprung, and the final blow, her public reclaiming of power, had landed exactly where she wanted it. The silence after Rico hit the floor was deafening. For a moment, the rooftop felt suspended in time, music still thumping faintly through the speakers, the city lights glittering beyond the glass. But every pair of eyes locked on Lena. Rico groaned, rolling onto his side, his face twisted in both pain and humiliation. He tried to push himself up, but his legs wobbled beneath him, and he slumped back down. The arrogance that had carried him for months was gone, replaced by something raw and ugly fear. Dane finally broke free of his stunned paralysis and moved toward his friend. "You," he began, pointing at Lena, but the words caught in his throat when she stepped forward, calm and deliberate. She stopped, just short of him, her gaze steady. "You think you're next?" Dane's jaw tightened, but he didn't move closer. Around them, the small crowd of stylists, models, and crew had pulled in, forming an unspoken ring. Some had phones out recording. Others simply watched with wide eyes, like witnesses to something they knew they'd be talking about for weeks. The party host, a senior creative director named Marla, pushed through the crowd. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded, her sharp voice cutting through the tension. Before Rico or Dane could answer, one of the lighting assistants spoke up from the back. "They've been harassing her all week. I saw it. We all did." That murmur spread quickly, others chiming in with quiet agreements, snippets of, "Yeah, I saw them corner her, and it wasn't just tonight." The tide of the room shifted, and for the first time, Rico and Dane's swagger seemed to evaporate completely. Marla's eyes narrowed. "Rico, Dane, get out. Now. We'll talk on Monday." Rico tried to protest, but when he glanced around and saw the number of phones pointed in his direction, he thought better of it. With Dane's help, he staggered toward the exit, muttering curses under his breath. The door shut behind them, and the rooftop seemed to exhale. Lena didn't bask in the attention. She simply walked to the bar, ordered a glass of water, and sat down at the far end, letting the adrenaline ebb from her system. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sharp release of tension she'd been carrying for days. One of the models approached, her voice soft. "That was incredible. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you made them answer for it." Lena gave a small, tired smile. "Sometimes people only understand when you speak in a language they can't ignore." She knew word would travel fast through the studio, through the industry, maybe even beyond. But more importantly, she knew Rico and Dane would think twice before putting their hands on anyone again. As the party slowly returned to its rhythm, Lena glanced out at the city skyline. She hadn't planned to be a spectacle tonight, but in the end, the throw wasn't just for her. It was for every silent witness who'd ever swallowed their voice. And that was a victory she could live with. Lena's experience was a reminder that silence in the face of harassment only serves those who abuse their power. By holding her ground and choosing her moment, she not only defended herself, but set a precedent that boundaries matter and that crossing them has consequences. Her calculated approach was as important as her skill. She didn't lash out in a moment of blind anger, but acted with precision, ensuring there were witnesses who could expose the truth. The lesson is clear. Confidence grows from preparation, and courage comes from knowing your own worth. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You need to be deliberate. Harassment thrives in shadows, but it withers when dragged into the light. Whether through words or actions, standing up for yourself isn't just self-defense. It's a way of telling the world that your dignity is not up for negotiation.